Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Bolt Action Reloading. In this week's episode, we're going to see if we can duplicate the performance of this 300 Winchester Magnum Gold Medal Match ammunition. Stick around. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here and you'd like to see how I and the rest of me here make our group smaller, start now by subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell icon. That way you get notified when I post new videos and you won't miss anything. If you're a fan of the channel, you can probably tell we're doing something slightly different this week, so we have a slightly different view. Our primary focus for this week's video is seeing if we can duplicate the performance of these 190 grain Sierra Match Kings loaded in the 300 Winchester Magnum Gold Medal Match ammunition. Our test platform, as usual, is our Thompson Center Compass chambered in 300 Winchester Magnum. We've replaced the plastic factory stock with the Boyds Pro Varmint laminated hardwood stock. This stock also has an adjustable comb height. To the action, we've added a 20 MOA EGW long action scope base. The scope we're using is a SWFA fixed 16 power scope, mil, and it's currently wearing 30mm Seekins precision scope rings that we upgraded from the SWFA rings that we were previously using. We've actually shot a couple reasonable groups with this ammunition, and before we run out of it, we thought we would try and see if we can duplicate or actually go better than the performance of this ammunition. Factory ammunition's been pretty rough for this rifle so far, even though our best group to date with this is only a 1.2 MOA group. Being that this is still so far off the lands, I was pretty impressed. In case you're not familiar with our platform and you'd like to be, I'll put up a card and you can go check out the playlist on our Thompson Center Compass chambered in 300 Winchester Magnum. Certainly not the highest performance 300 Winchester Magnum you can get, but it's the one we've been working with on the channel. Not that we've tried a significant amount of factory ammunition, but we really haven't found any factory ammunition that's very good, and with a lot of our reloads we've been struggling as well. Being able to improve on the performance that this ammo gets is really what we're going for today. Our first step in duplicating this is actually having the bullet, but they make it very easy on us. You can probably see this is a 190 grain Sierra Match King, and that is exactly what we have on the table. Sierra's part number is 2210 for these. Plenty of load data out there from Sierra as well as other sources. Now, I'm guessing since you're watching this video, you might already be aware, but just in case you're not, Gold Medal Match, maybe not as much for 300 Winchester Magnum. I don't know, but I know as far as 308, the Gold Medal Match line is kind of the gold standard. Not that I'm a 308 shooter, but I've read on several locations that said if people were having trouble with their rifle, one of the common things that I found people would tell you to get a box of Gold Medal Match ammunition. If the rifle wouldn't shoot it, it was more than likely the rifle and not the ammunition. And frankly, that's just a bold statement. I know a lot of people that shoot it in 308, though it shouldn't be surprising that it performed reasonably in our 300 Winchester Magnum. Reasonably to us might be different to some, so just to give you a ballpark, so far with this rifle, we've really been hurting to get even a single-digit standard deviation. On 2 repeated groups, we actually had a standard deviation of 8.26 with identical average velocity and extreme spread of 20. Well, not extremely great, that is very reasonable for factory ammunition. And if we can beat it with reloads, we certainly would like to. And since it had performed reasonably, we're going to go forward with this project. What are our first steps of this project? Number 1, find our bullet, which is pretty easy. The 190 grain Sierra Match King, they don't hide it. It's right there on the box. Sierra's part number is 2210. We've already got that figured out. Checkbox completed. If you can see on the box, you'll see this ammunition is rated at 2,900 feet per second. The average velocity we were achieving was somewhere around 2,930 feet per second. So at least hitting the box velocity is something we'd like to do. Performing identically would be nice, but not really required. 2,900 feet per second is close enough. Obviously, accuracy is key. Our reloads really need to perform just as well or better than our factory ammunition. I'm sure since this is Federal Gold Medal ammunition, they wouldn't be using anything less than the large rifle Magnum primers of their own making. And probably in the long run, that's what we'll end up doing. But to be perfectly honest, we're using Winchester brass instead of Federal today. And frankly, I'd already primed it with Winchester primers. So at least for our first round, we're going to be using Winchester primers. Have no fear. I've actually ran some testing with these before. They perform very similarly to the 215M, at least in the testing I've done. If they work really well out of the gate for us, we might just keep them, but we'll have no trouble. We do have 215Ms in stock. Not being a true clone load, we're certainly just looking for the performance and we're picking our projectile. I've already let out of the bag the second deviation from our playing. Obviously, our Federal Premium ammunition has Federal brass. Not that I would mind actually having Federal brass to use this with. However, every place I checked when I looked was actually out of stock. We have plenty of brass. Again, we have Winchester. We have a couple others. So Winchester just happens to be what we're going to be using today. And if it works well, it's probably what we'll stick with in the future. Maybe if it comes back in stock later, we'll give it a try out. We do have 20 pieces at least of this Federal ammunition. So when we're all done, we can shoot it if we want to. But at least working with our other lot of brass is what we're going to start with for now. And since we've started going on deviations, let's talk about one more. As you can probably see, I've loaded 10 rounds already, and that was honestly to get this point of the video figured out in advance. We're going to talk about overall length. So before we get into what we're actually going to be using for our test, let's talk about our factory ammunition. Now, measuring all 20 rounds, our actual average CBTO measurement is 2.735 inches, and our average cartridge overall length is 3.328 inches. Keep in mind our SAMI spec is 3.34, so these are actually even shorter than SAMI load. If you've been following along with our Thompson Center project, you'll know that this has a very long distance to the lands. With this specific projectile, we're looking at a CBTO of 2.939 inches and a cartridge overall length with this particular projectile of 3.527 inches. A very significant distance from the lands. So if you've done the math already, you can tell that our factory ammunition is jumping a little over 0.2 of an inch, 204 thousandths to be specific. I will claim responsibility for a little bit of that. I'll put a card up if you'd like to go check it out. We actually have ran the Tubbs final finish system through this rifle. If you'd like to see that video, we shoot a group of this to start with, run through the entire process of using that system, and show the barrel as we go along. Through that process, we actually pushed those lands out even further. And if I recall correctly, we actually increased the distance to the lands with this particular projectile about 35 thousandths. We certainly didn't do us any favors if we were trying to load close to the lands. So for today's test, we really had to grab our magazine because that is another constraint which I thought that we should actually work with. Since obviously our factory ammunition will easily be magazine fed, that is something I would like as well. Looking at our magazine, I probably have stated before that I thought that the actual overall length that I was trying to limit to was about 3.450 inches. I've actually seen with our loaded ammunition exactly how far we can push these. At least initially, we're going to try and load as close as we can to the lands, and that's going to put our CBTO at 2.883 inches. The average overall length of our 10 rounds that we've loaded, which have all fit in this magazine, of 3.472 inches. A little further than I thought that we had. That should put our reloads about 56 thousandths from the lands. If we wanted to be a little bit more ridiculous and single feed these, we could put them out a little bit further, but for this particular testing, the magazine is what's going to restrict our overall length, and we're hoping to still find some accuracy. Now, analyzing our data a little bit further, we actually measured all 20 of these rounds before we started. We wrote the weight on the case so we could make sure we had every single one identified correctly. So for the 10 rounds that we've actually fired so far, you can see the starting weight, the fired weight, the difference. We're actually subtracting the weight of this projectile. Now I am just assuming a straight 190 grains for these projectiles. For the average 10 that I measured, we only had basically an overall spread of not even quite 0.3 of a grain. I really consider that to be pretty good. The high side of those was about 190. A couple came in 2 to 0.3 under that. I actually measured a couple of the 215M primers. Those are about 5.6 grains before they're fired. But when I actually removed a spent primer, I'm actually taking those down to an even 5 grains. Doing our quick subtraction, we can get an idea close to what our charge weight for whatever powder they're using is going to be. The charge weight is going to be somewhere, to my calculations, around 67.4 grains. More than likely, Federal is using a proprietary blend of powder, and knowing what it was wouldn't do us any good because more than likely we can't buy it. I didn't think it was worth taking one of these rounds apart just to find out whether it was a ball powder or an extruded powder. More than likely ball, at least with most of the factory ammunition I have ever seen. And since we can't buy it, I didn't figure it was worth wrecking one piece of ammunition. Unless you're just listening to this and not watching it, you will know that we obviously have 5 powders on the table. These will actually be the first 5 powders that we try. Basing most of the information on Sierra's data, the actually only other one we're relying on a different website is Reloader 23. Alliance website indicates that 2,900 feet per second is possible with that powder. And so the load data we'll be using is from Alliant. All the rest of the data for all the powders you can see on the table, the Reloader 26, the N560, H4350, as well as H1000, all are straight out of Sierra's manual for this 190 grain projectile. Running through the list real quick, we'll actually talk a little bit about why we picked what we did. Number 1, in Sierra's current manual that they just released, at least I have it on my phone, Hodgins H4350 is actually listed as the accuracy powder for this load. The downside of that is they are claiming that at 2850 feet per second is the sweet spot for this particular load. I don't really plan on that meeting our 2900 feet per second requirement. However, they do at max load, I rated this to 2910 feet per second. So at the max charge, we theoretically will be reaching that target velocity, hopefully without seeing too much pressure. When we're trying to duplicate a good load, it's really hard to ignore what Sierra says is the most accurate powder. Moving down the line, you'll see Vitavori's N560. This particular powder we haven't shot yet. N560 is actually the accuracy load for the 220 grain Sierra Match King. Vitavori powders are highly regarded. I haven't tried very many of them yet, but I'm excited to do so today. Moving on down the list, H1000 has performed fairly well for us so far in 300 Winchester Magnum, as well as some of the 338 Lopwa we've done. Being extreme powder, meaning temperature stabilized, is certainly going to be on our list. The load data indicates that this should be completely capable of achieving the velocity we need it to. It is certainly a contender. Now, last but not least, Alliance Reloader 23. Technically, Alliance does have Reloader 23 data. What pushed me to try this powder was actually Sierra's old load data. If you actually look at both, not only Sierra's old load manual, Reloader 22 was the accuracy powder that was previously published. Not only than that, but also Lyman's manual for the same projectile said Reloader 22 was the accuracy charge to try. Certainly, the data is not exchangeable, but Reloader 23 is essentially the temperature stabilized version of Reloader 22. We have Reloader 23, and we have good data for it. No reason not to try it today. Sierra's load data does not have any Reloader 23 data, so maybe it's even more accurate than the H4350. We won't know until we try it. We might very easily break this into two different videos. Since we're going through all the introductory stuff in this video, we might only cover 2 powders in this video, and then we'll do a follow-up with the next 3 powders to do our beginning. In today's video, we're going to test the velocity and pressure for all of these powders. So what our plan is going to be is taking every single one of these powders to max and then backing it down in 10 rounds in 0.3 of a grain increments. I'll put the case volumes on your screen so you can check them out. While the Winchester and the Federal don't have the exact same case volume, I think that we're not going to see a huge drastic difference. And if we did want to put this in a Federal case, we might only have to adjust our load a little bit. But hopefully we'll be able to see where we're going to hit pressure, where we're going to see the velocity that we need to. After we run our test with these 5 powders, maybe we'll be able to pick 1 or 2 and do a more detailed workup with those to see if we can get a good clone. Depending how interested you guys are, we might do it with all of the different powders, but we're going to take our initial data, look through it, and see what looks the most promising moving forward. As you can see, I've actually written all of the charge weights. It's going for every single powder, the charge weight we need to load. Unless you guys want to hear the beep of my charge master, I'm going to get that done. You can see I've already got our bullet seating die set because that's how we got our overall length figured out. We're going to get these things loaded, get out to the range, and we'll take you along. So this is me from the future. We're actually only going to concentrate on 2 of the particular powders that we tried today. And in the next video, we're going to cover the 3 other powders that we're not talking about today. So for today's test, we're going to talk about H4350 and Reloader 23, the likely candidates, since that's what's sitting on our reloading bench. Let's talk about the reloading data just so we have it all in one place. The brass is all sized the exact same way, so there's no differences between the loads there. For our Winchester brass and our H4350 loads, we started at 66.2 grains, went up in 0.3 grains increments all the way to our max load of 68.9 grains. Our CBTO was 2.883 inches with a cartridge overall length of 3.472 inches. Again, this is Winchester brass, loaded with Winchester large rifle Magnum primers. The projectile part number is 2210, the 190 grain hollow point boat tail by Sierra. And according to our data, we're going to reach 2,910 feet per second. Let's go out to the range and we'll give it a try. Welcome back. So much for our accuracy load. If you guys are counting or carrying at this point in time, hopefully you're not, but 1.944 MOA was the group that we settled on today. Like some of our recent reloading, we're going to pull out our quick load data and talk about this a little bit before we get to our Reloader 23 testing. Relax guys, it's coming. Let's start with our velocity chart. If we put our velocity chart on the screen, you can see at 66.2 grains, our velocity was only 2771 feet per second. At our max charge of 68.9 grains, our velocity increased all the way to 2893 feet per second. Low, our actual max velocity was at 68.6 grains at 2894 feet per second. So achieving a 1.944 MOA group wasn't really what we had in mind, but that's what happened. Let's talk about our quick load data just a little bit. Our BA factor, in case you guys are playing along at home, we're going to set to 5330 to make this chart match our actual results. So starting it down at 66.2 grains, our estimated velocity would have been 2785, actual achieved velocity 2771. 68.9 grains, according to quick load, would have given us 2,881 feet per second, and we actually reached 2893 feet per second. Pressure on that load would have been 6,478 psi, so well within our safe range for this cartridge. But I'll put all the shots on there just so you guys can get an idea of what quick load predicted, what we actually had. What's interesting on there, at least to me, I'm trying to put the barrel times on here. So our barrel time down at 66.2 grains was 1.258 milliseconds, and our highest charge was 1.196 milliseconds. If our barrel time is playing to our accuracy whatsoever, our actual barrel time we tried to hit for this testing would have been the 1.2282 millisecond load, which according to my calculator would have been somewhere around 67.5 grains, which with this powder being such a fast powder only gives us a fill rate of 89.7%. If you're like me and prefer a full case, this might not be the powder we choose to go forward with. And at that velocity, we're only reaching slightly over 2830 feet per second. We're rather short of our 2910 feet per second goal, loading down at that range. Our next barrel node, if we sped this up a little more, would have been 1.1016 milliseconds, but it's clear with our pressures that would take so much powder, we would be well over the case pressure. Probably not something we really want to try for this particular testing. Looking at our velocity curve, it looks like that 67.4 grains is right on the top side of a possible velocity node. That might be something to actually try if we're not worried about hitting our velocity, but it might help to actually back that down a little bit below 67.4 grains, not sure how that would affect our actual accuracy. Since our chart indicates we only got to 60,478 psi, let's put a shot of the brass on the screen and we can take a quick look at that. You guys can determine for yourselves if you feel there's any pressure signs here. I will put a piece of shot factory brass on either side so you guys can take a look. Compare the primer from some factory loadings to actually see what pressure looks like. Though it does not look like there's anything out of hand here, it looks like we might have to bump up just a little bit higher to reach that 2910 feet per second. And maybe that's what we end up doing if we want to stick with H4350. Even at our max load, we're at a 91.6% fill rate, and we're creeping up right to that max case pressure according to quick load. Not sure how interested we are going to be in this going forward, especially if barrel nodes are actually going to play into the accuracy of this rifle. That aside, let's look at Reloader 23. Say before we got out to the range, let's actually talk about our load details. Our Reloader 23 is actually going to have 9 shots only. If you'll recall, this brass was fire formed and we lost a piece of brass to our annealer, getting our setting for Aztec, and that's what we used to actually anneal all of the brass. So with Reloader 23, we started at 73.1 grains, moved up in 0.3 of grain increments to 75.5 grains. Same cartridge overall length of 3.472 inches, CBTO again 2.883 inches, Winchester brass, and Winchester large rifle primers. All those details out of the way, let's go to the range and see what happens. Welcome back again. Not too significantly different, unfortunately, from H4350, at least as well as the group size is concerned. Really just trying to find our velocity, figure out where we need to be to match that 2910 feet per second load. Overall group was 1.998 MOA, but our velocity chart is going to tell part of our story today. Putting our velocity chart on the screen, you'll see at 73.1 grains, we were all the way at 2992 feet per second. At our max charge of 75.5 grains, we actually achieved all the way up to 3,073 feet per second. Our actual load data insinuated to be somewhere around 3,005 feet per second. We achieved well over what our load data predicted today. Putting our quick load data on the screen again, and for those of you playing along at home, our BA value is 4,690, which would have given us an estimated velocity at 73.1 grains of 2989, and we achieved 2992. Up at our max load of 75.5 grains, quick load would have predicted 3,066 feet per second, and our actual achieved velocity was 3073. So with this BA value, I thought it fit our curve at least relatively well. Looking further in detail, our estimated velocities from quick load as well as our barrel times, you'll see our barrel time started right around 1.144 milliseconds, got all the way down to 1.094 milliseconds. As far as actual barrel nodes that we're concerned, we basically hit our barrel node right about that 75.2 grain load, being our barrel time was 1.100. Our fourth barrel node would have been 1.1016 milliseconds. And since that seems to be very close to a velocity node there, that might be interesting to load in. However, pressure is going to be a different story. Even though we're well within Sierra's load data today, quick load is actually predicting even down at 73.1 grains to achieve that velocity. We started off at 70,060 psi, and our actual max charge of 75.5 grains to achieve the velocity that we were at today, according to quick load, was 77,499 psi. Well above what this case is actually rated for. Since we're talking about pressure, let's put our brass on the screen real quick. And if you guys look closely, you'll see at that 75.5 grain charge, there is a little bit of an ejector mark on that brass. But overall, no real significant pressure signs from anywhere else. Our primers really don't look cratered any worse than our factory ammo that I'll put on the end of the string. So really not sure what conclusion we should draw today. I'm certain that Sierra wouldn't give us anything that they felt would be unsafe, but theoretically, even to reach 2990 feet per second, we're looking at 70,000 psi. Something just seems off with that, and if you guys are quick load nerds and you have an idea of anything I could be possibly doing wrong, I'd love to know in the comment section below. And I'm still learning. Any input I appreciate below. Going by quick load, if we actually wanted to get down at our next velocity node, down at 1.2282 milliseconds, it looks like we're going to be down at 69.3 grains, somewhere in that ballpark, with a 92% fill rate, and unfortunately only achieving 2,865 feet per second. In that range, we might have a little bit safer pressure. Not that I'm really necessarily calling these completely unsafe. We are well within load data. For risk of making this video too long, we're going to cover the other three powders in our next video. So out of these two particular powders, Reloader 23 gave us a significant amount of velocity past what our actual target was today of 2910 feet per second. But I believe this data will be able to get us somewhere close to the range of what we were trying to shoot for. Even if you're not into this 190 grain Sierra Match King, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any comments or questions or help you can offer me, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell on so you get notified when I post next week's video. I hope to see you back next week. And until then, stay safe in small groups.